Do you know what it means to live from the end? Not to hope, not to wait, but to feel that what you desire is already yours. I discovered this truth when I decided to manifest my wife, yes, the love of my life, within 1 week. I stopped chasing love outside and turned inward to the only creative power there is, my imagination. Each night before sleep, I would close my eyes and see her beside me. I felt the warmth of her hand, the sound of her laughter, the quiet joy of companionship. I imagined us already married, already one. I didn't wish, I knew. And that inner knowing became the seed of my reality. By the fourth day, something shifted. The outer world began to rearrange itself to mirror my inner state. A chance encounter led to a conversation, the conversation to connection, and connection to love. Within a week, I met the very woman who embodied everything I had seen in imagination. You see, it wasn't chance, it was law. The world outside is but a reflection of the world within. If you persist in the assumption that you already are what you wish to be, nothing can stop it from appearing in form. Desire is simply your higher self calling you to awaken to what's already true in imagination. So tonight, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Walk as though it were already done. Feel love, live love, and let imagination do the work. What you dare to assume as true will harden into fact. Imagination creates reality because every event, condition, and relationship begins first as an inner image. What you vividly imagine with feeling becomes the pattern for your outer world. The mind is not a passive observer, but the architect of experience, shaping substance through belief and assumption. When you imagine something as already true, you impress that state upon consciousness, and life rearranges itself to match it. Every scene you hold with conviction plants a seed in the unseen, and that seed must grow. The outer world has no choice but to mirror the inner vision you consistently maintain. To live from the end means to occupy, in consciousness, the state of the wish fulfilled. It is not about hoping something will happen someday, but about knowing and feeling that it already has. You must mentally move into the scene that would be true if your desire were now a fact, and dwell there until it feels natural. When you live from the end, you stop struggling, you stop looking for signs, and you begin to act, think, and feel as one who already possesses the thing desired. The difference is subtle but powerful. Living toward the end implies separation. It keeps the desire in the future, forever beyond reach. Living from the end collapses time, bringing the invisible into form by assuming its reality now. It means to think from the result, not of it, to feel the joy, gratitude, and satisfaction of the accomplished desire in this present moment. When this inner state becomes your dwelling place, your reactions change, your energy aligns, and your outer world must conform. Every circumstance, person, and opportunity begins to reflect that fulfilled state, for consciousness is the only reality, and your assumption determines the shape of everything that follows. Feeling is the secret to manifestation, because it is the bridge between imagination and reality. Thought alone has no creative power until it is charged with emotion, for feeling gives thought life. The universe responds not to words, but to the vibration of belief, to the inner knowing that something is already so. When you feel the wish fulfilled, you impress that state upon your subconscious mind, and it begins to express it through events, circumstances, and people. Feeling is the language of the deeper self, and what you feel deeply, you inevitably experience. To manifest anything, you must move beyond mere visualization and enter into the feeling of the experience. Imagine the scene that implies your desire is realized, then sink into it with all your senses. Hear the sounds, see the details, feel the joy, the relief, the peace, or the gratitude that would naturally be yours if it were already done. Let that feeling become dominant, and refuse to return to the old state of lack. The subconscious cannot distinguish between imagination and fact. It only knows the feeling you dwell in. Every time you sustain the feeling of fulfillment, you rewrite the script of your life. You are no longer waiting for change. You are the change. The secret lies not in forcing results, but in feeling the inner reality so vividly that the outer world must obey. Feeling is the magnet that draws your unseen desires into visibility, the silent cause behind every visible effect. When you master feeling, you master creation. For everything you will ever experience begins first as an emotion fully accepted as true within yourself. Desire signals what's already yours in spirit, because no longing is random, no yearning accidental. The very presence of a desire within you is evidence that its fulfillment already exists in another dimension of consciousness, calling you to recognize and claim it. You could not desire what you were not capable of expressing or possessing. Desire is the divine whisper, the inner invitation to step into the reality that already belongs to you in imagination. When you feel a genuine desire, you are not being shown something to chase, but something to awaken within yourself. Everything begins and ends in consciousness. When a desire arises, it means that within your deeper self, the thing desired is already complete. It is your higher self showing you a finished picture, urging you to align your thoughts and feelings with it. To deny desire is to deny the voice of your own creative spirit. You are never desiring to create something new, but to become aware of what already is. The feeling of wanting is the bridge between what is unseen and what will be seen. Your task is not to question how it will come, but to accept it as done, to feel it real in imagination until it becomes your natural state of being. Desire is the movement of life-seeking expression through you. When you honor it, when you assume the feeling that its fulfillment is now, you align with the rhythm of creation itself. The outer world then begins to rearrange, not through struggle or effort, but through the silent law of assumption that governs all manifestation. To follow your desire is to follow the path your spirit has already walked. What seems like a future goal is in truth a present reality waiting for your recognition. Every genuine desire contains its own fulfillment. The moment it is felt, the way to its expression is prepared. You are not chasing after what you want. You are remembering what is already yours in spirit and allowing it to unfold naturally through the power of belief, imagination, and feeling. Persist in assumption until it feels natural, for assumption is the seed of creation, and persistence is the water that brings it to life. The first moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you plant a spiritual seed in the soil of consciousness. But like any seed, it must be nourished, protected, and allowed to grow in silence. The temptation to look for evidence, to doubt, or to return to the old state must be resisted, for these are the weeds that choke the tender shoot of your assumption. The outer world may appear unchanged for a time, but the law of being works unseen, and if you remain faithful, your assumption will harden into fact. Persistence means to live inwardly, as though what you desire is already accomplished. It is to return again and again to the inner reality, no matter what the senses report. You do not argue with appearances, you simply turn within and occupy the end. At first, it may feel artificial, even forced, because the old state has been your dwelling place for so long. But repetition gives birth to conviction. The more often you assume the feeling of fulfillment, the more natural it becomes, until one day you no longer need to imagine. It feels self-evident, inevitable, true. This is the point of transformation, when the inner state becomes the only reality to you. Persistence is not strain or effort, it is quiet confidence. It is faith sustained through feeling. It means to refuse to identify with lack or limitation, and to rest mentally in the world of fulfillment. Each time doubt arises, you gently return to the assumption. Each time fear whispers, you remind yourself that imagination is the only reality and that the unseen is more powerful than what is seen. This mental discipline gradually shifts your vibration, and life begins to echo your inner conviction. To persist until it feels natural is to train the subconscious mind to accept the new state as fact. The subconscious creates what it accepts as true, and it accepts through repetition and feeling, not logic or proof. The moment your assumption feels natural, creation is finished, for the subconscious has been impressed. Then the outer world, by law, must rearrange itself to reflect that accepted truth. Nothing can prevent it, the law never fails. Therefore, persistence is the bridge between desire and fulfillment. It is the silent act of faith that holds to the unseen reality until it solidifies into form. The world will mirror your inner state unfailingly, and persistence ensures that the reflection you see is one of victory, not defeat. When you persist in assumption until it feels natural, You align with the creative process of God within you, who calls things that are not seen as though they were, and in doing so, brings them forth into visible expression. The outer world mirrors the inner world because consciousness is the only reality, and what you hold within inevitably reflects itself without. Every event, every relationship, every circumstance that you encounter is but the projection of your internal state of being. The world is a looking glass, showing you who you believe yourself to be. When you understand this, you cease to blame conditions, people, or luck, for you recognize that nothing happens outside of you that does not first exist within you. The outer world is not separate from you. It is your own consciousness objectified. If your mind is filled with fear, you meet fearful situations. If you dwell in the feeling of love and abundance, life responds in kind. This is not superstition but law. The universe is neutral and obedient. It must express the state of consciousness you persist in. You can know your inner world simply by observing what your outer world contains, for your experiences are the mirror in which you see your assumptions made visible. When you change within, the reflection must change, because the mirror has no power of its own. Everything begins as an unseen vibration of thought and feeling. The inner dialogue you maintain, the emotions you repeat, the beliefs you hold, these are creative forces shaping the stage of your life. Most people attempt to rearrange the reflection while leaving the cause untouched, and so they struggle endlessly with effects. They fight circumstances, they try to fix others, yet the same patterns return, because the inner picture remains the same. True transformation happens only when you alter your inner conversations, when you replace doubt with faith, resentment with forgiveness, and fear with confidence. Once the internal state shifts, the outer must follow, for reality has no choice but to echo the consciousness that sustains it. The outer world is a faithful servant, never a master. It cannot betray your dominant state. Even when appearances seem to contradict your desire, remember that they are simply the lingering reflection of previous assumptions. Do not react to them as final facts. Instead, turn inward and persist in the new feeling until it takes root. The moment you stop reacting to the old reflection, you withdraw power from it, and it begins to dissolve. Your attention is the light that sustains form. Where you withdraw it, form fades, and where you direct it, form strengthens. To understand that the outer world mirrors the inner world is to reclaim your creative authority. You stop living as a victim of circumstance and begin to live as the conscious creator of your reality. You recognize that peace within brings harmony without, that gratitude within attracts abundance without, that love within calls forth loving relationships without. Life becomes a divine conversation between your inner states and their outer expressions. There is no separation, only correspondence. The secret is to make your inner world beautiful, loving, confident, and fulfilled. Cultivate the feelings you wish the outer world to show you, for it can only give back what you impress upon it. When you hold in imagination the scene that implies your desire fulfilled and feel it as real, you are shaping the mirror that life must reflect. Every outer change begins as an inner decision to assume a new state of consciousness. The law is exact, unfailing, and impartial. The outer world can only mirror the inner one. Don't wish. Know it's done, for wishing keeps your desire at a distance, while knowing claims it as your present reality. Wishing is rooted in lack. It acknowledges separation between you and what you seek. Knowing, however, arises from the awareness that imagination creates reality, that everything you truly feel as real within must express itself without. The act of wishing says, I hope one day this will happen, but the act of knowing declares, it is already so. In this difference lies the power to manifest. The one who knows walks by faith, not by sight, and in doing so compels the outer world to conform to the inner conviction. When you wish, you are still seeing your desire as something outside of you, something to be attained. You may visualize it, you may speak of it, but your inner feeling still whispers, it isn't mine yet. The subconscious mind, which accepts only the feeling of truth, hears that whisper and continues to reproduce the experience of waiting. Knowing dissolves waiting. It claims the end right now and rests in the certainty that what is real within must soon appear without. The creative process begins and ends in consciousness. Everything visible is the shadow cast by an invisible belief. To move from wishing to knowing, you must feel the reality of your desire so deeply that it becomes self-evident. You do not force belief, you assume it. You enter the state mentally and emotionally as though there were no question of its fulfillment. You see the world through the eyes of the one who already has it. You hear the words you would hear, feel the emotions you would feel, and act from that inner certainty. The senses may deny it, circumstances may appear unchanged, but you hold your inner ground and say quietly, "It is done." This inner declaration aligns you with the law of assumption, which states that what you persistently assume to be true must manifest. Knowing is not arrogance, it is faith. It is the humble recognition of the creative power within you, the same power spoken of when it was said, "All things are possible to him that believeth." To believe is to accept something as already accomplished, not as a future hope. When you know it's done, you no longer strain or beg, you rest in peace. You may take action, but it will be effortless, inspired action, flowing naturally from your new state of being. Every step, every encounter, every coincidence will begin to reflect your inner knowing, because life must mirror your conviction. The mind that knows it is done does not look for signs. It does not keep checking the soil to see if the seed is growing. It understands that unseen processes are at work. The moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, creation is finished spiritually, and the outer world only plays catch up. You are not creating from nothing. You are revealing what is already complete in consciousness. The finished work exists now. Your task is to recognize it and align with it emotionally. When you wish, you vibrate with longing. When you know, you vibrate with fulfillment. This change of vibration is what alters your reality. The subconscious mind cannot resist a state that feels natural. So the moment your knowing feels genuine, manifestation becomes inevitable. Every obstacle begins to dissolve, every closed door begins to open, and what once seemed distant becomes ordinary fact. The law never fails, it only responds to the dominant feeling. Train yourself to dwell in the end. Whenever doubt arises, return gently to the feeling of completion. Whisper to yourself, "It is done," and let that become the rhythm of your inner life. Feel the relief, the gratitude, the satisfaction that would be yours if it were already true, because in imagination it is true. The outer world is only delayed reflection. It must eventually catch up with what you have accepted within. Knowing is the bridge between desire and fulfillment. It is the calm confidence of one who has already received. You do not need to wait for evidence, because the evidence will come as surely as the sunrise follows night. You do not plead with the universe, you command it by your assumption. To know is to claim your divine authority as the creator of your own world. You move through life quietly certain, inwardly fulfilled, outwardly patient. You no longer wonder when or how it will happen, because you understand that it already has. You rest in the invisible completion of your desire, trusting that time will reveal it in perfect order. For what is known in imagination must appear in form. Sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. For the moments before you drift into sleep are the gateway to creation. The subconscious mind, which shapes your outer world, is most open and receptive in that sacred transition between wakefulness and rest. Whatever you impress upon it at that time becomes the pattern from which your experiences unfold. When you fall asleep thinking of lack, worry, or longing, you carry those feelings into the depths of consciousness, and they reproduce themselves as conditions in your waking life. But when you fall asleep in the feeling that your wish is already fulfilled, you imprint the image of completion upon your inner self, and life must mirror it back to you in form. To sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to surrender completely to the assumption that what you desire is already done. You do not beg or hope, you accept. You close your eyes and move inward, imagining the scene that would naturally follow your desire's realization. If you wished for love, you feel the warmth of being loved. If you wished for abundance, you feel the relief and gratitude of security. If you wished for healing, you feel the vitality and peace of being whole. The body may lie in bed, but in imagination you live in the state of your fulfilled desire, and you drift off in that consciousness as though it were fact. This practice is powerful because sleep is the bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind. During the day, your conscious reasoning can resist new ideas, it clings to facts and appearances. But in the stillness of night, the guard lowers, and the subconscious accepts whatever feeling dominates your heart. It does not question, it only receives. That is why Neville Goddard taught that the last 5 minutes before sleep are the most important of your day. They are the creative minutes that determine the shape of tomorrow. To use them wisely is to harness the greatest power within you, the power to assume and create. Begin each night by quieting the mind. Release the concerns of the day, the doubts, and the old stories that keep you tied to the past. Then, imagine a short, vivid scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. Keep it simple, natural, and joyful. For example, if your desire is marriage, imagine your ring on your hand and feel the joy of companionship. If your desire is success, imagine a friend congratulating you and feel the pride and gratitude in their words. The scene is not about detail, it is about emotion. Feel it so intensely that it becomes real to you. As you sink deeper into relaxation, let that feeling expand until it fills your whole being. Let it become the atmosphere in which you sleep. You may even whisper inwardly, "It is done," or "Thank you," until the words fade into feeling. The key is not to force or strain, but to surrender to the assumption that your desire is accomplished. In that quiet surrender, your subconscious is impressed and the seed of your new reality is planted. Just as a seed knows how to grow without effort, so too does your subconscious know how to bring about the outer manifestation. When you awake the next morning, do not rush to see if anything has changed. Trust the process. The outer world takes time to rearrange itself according to the new pattern you impressed. Persist night after night until the feeling of fulfillment becomes natural. The more consistently you sleep in that state, the more quickly the invisible becomes visible. Every repetition deepens the impression, and soon the assumption feels more real than the old condition. Sleeping in the feeling of the wish fulfilled also purifies your state of mind. It trains you to think from the end rather than toward it. Instead of focusing on problems or delays, you live inwardly in the atmosphere of completion. This shift changes not only your dreams but your waking hours as well. You begin to move through life with quiet confidence, because your subconscious has already accepted the new state as fact. Your reactions, choices, and opportunities subtly align with that inner knowing. Even when appearances contradict your desire, you no longer react with fear or doubt, because each night you return to the truth within. You feed the inner reality until it dominates the outer. This is the true act of faith, not hoping for a miracle, but assuming one has already occurred. Every night becomes a sacred ritual of creation, a silent communion between your conscious will and your divine imagination. You are no longer trying to make something happen. You are resting in the awareness that it already has. As you master this practice, you realize that imagination and feeling are the creative forces behind every aspect of your life. You stop waiting for circumstances to change before you feel fulfilled, and you begin to feel fulfilled so that circumstances may change. Your nights become peaceful, your days purposeful, because you live in two worlds, the invisible world of imagination where creation is finished, and the visible world that merely reflects it. To sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to live as the creator, not the victim of your reality. It is to rest in faith, to surrender to the unseen, and to let the law of assumption bring your inner vision into physical form. When you make this a nightly practice, you align with the creative rhythm of life itself, and the boundary between desire and fulfillment dissolves, for in consciousness they are already one. The law of assumption never fails, because it operates with the same certainty and precision as the law of gravity. It is not something that works for a few and not for others, nor does it depend on luck, time, or circumstance. It is the law that governs creation itself, declaring that whatever you assume to be true, whatever you feel and persist in as reality, must manifest in your outer world. This law is impartial and unchanging. It does not respond to effort, struggle, or pleading. It responds only to the state of consciousness you occupy. When you assume something as true, when you inwardly accept it as a fact, you set in motion the invisible forces that shape your external experience. The outer world is nothing but a mirror reflecting your sustained assumptions. To understand that the law of assumption never fails is to grasp that imagination is the creative power of God within you. You are always assuming, whether consciously or unconsciously, and those assumptions form the structure of your life. You cannot avoid the law, you can only use it wisely or ignorantly. Every joy, every disappointment, every relationship, and every success in your life is a shadow cast by the beliefs you have held about yourself and the world. If you wish to change the shadow, you must change the assumption that casts it. The law itself never fails. Only your recognition and persistence in applying it determine how swiftly it works in your favor. When you assume a state with feeling, you are declaring that it already exists. The mind cannot hold two opposing states at once. Therefore, as you dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the old state begins to dissolve, and your new assumption takes root. The subconscious, which is the creative power of your world, accepts as true whatever you impress upon it through repeated feeling. It does not question logic. It does not weigh evidence. It accepts what you feel to be real. This is why faith is not blind optimism, but a deep knowing that the unseen reality is already complete. The moment you feel the new state to be natural, creation is finished spiritually, and the law guarantees its physical expression. Many doubt the law because they waver between faith and fear. They assume their wish fulfilled for a moment, then quickly return to the assumption of lack. They are like gardeners who plant a seed and then dig it up daily to check its growth. But the law works silently and unfailingly beneath the surface. Every time you persist in the feeling of the fulfilled desire, you water the seed of manifestation. Every time you doubt, you slow its growth. Yet even in this, the law does not fail. It faithfully reflects your mixed assumptions by producing partial or delayed results. The law mirrors your inner consistency. It never judges, never withholds, it simply expresses. To live consciously by the law of assumption is to take responsibility for your world. It means you no longer see yourself as subject to chance or circumstance, but as the creator of cause. You recognize that every event and person in your life plays the role you have unconsciously assigned them through your assumptions. If you assume that people are kind and opportunities are abundant, your world will reflect those qualities. If you assume that life is unfair and love is difficult, the same law will confirm it. The law never fails, it simply amplifies whatever you believe to be true. Your task is not to make the law work, it already works perfectly. Your task is to assume consciously, to feel deliberately, and to persist faithfully in your chosen reality. Persistence is the secret to mastering this law. You must remain loyal to your assumption, even when the senses contradict it. Appearances are nothing more than delayed reflections of past assumptions. Do not be deceived by what seems real in the moment, for it is only the shadow of what you previously believed. Continue to dwell in the new state until it feels completely natural. Once it feels real within, the outer world must conform. There is no power outside of consciousness that can prevent the manifestation of a firmly held assumption. The law is mechanical, dependable, and eternal. It must express what is impressed upon it. The law of assumption never fails because it operates through consciousness itself, and consciousness is the foundation of all existence. Everything that appears solid or external is first a state of awareness. The table, the sky, the body, the events of your day, all of it began as invisible imagination before becoming visible form. When you assume a feeling or belief and hold it, you are determining the pattern of what will come. The universe is not arbitrary, it is ordered, structured, and precise. It rearranges itself according to the vibration of your inner state. The moment you shift that state, the world begins to shift with it, though sometimes invisibly at first. But whether you see it immediately or not, the law is always at work. When you understand this, you stop seeking proof outside and begin creating certainty within. You stop asking when or how and start knowing that it is already done. The law's perfection lies in its impartiality. It serves the loving assumption just as faithfully as it serves the fearful one. This is why Neville Goddard urged us to assume only the best, to live from the end, to persist in the feeling of fulfilled desire. You are always manifesting, always expressing some assumption. Choose wisely, feel deeply, and hold fast, for the law cannot fail to bring forth that which you have accepted as real. Every manifestation you have ever experienced, good or bad, joyful or painful, has been the outpicturing of an assumption held with feeling. Once you truly see this, life becomes an art, not a battle. You begin to work with the law rather than against it. You learn that faith is not hoping things will change, but knowing that they already have. You learn that your inner world is the blueprint of the outer, and that nothing can resist a mind convinced of its own truth. The law of assumption never fails, because it is the creative principle of life itself, silently shaping every experience according to the state of being you most consistently embody. What you imagine and feel real must manifest, because imagination is the creative force of the universe, and feeling is the energy that gives life to the unseen. Every experience, object, and condition in your outer world began first as an image in consciousness. The mind is not a passive observer, but the origin of creation itself. When you imagine something vividly and accept it as true, by feeling its reality within you, you impress that image upon your subconscious mind, and the subconscious faithfully reproduces it as physical reality. There is no exception to this law. What you consistently imagine and feel real, you will live. Most people imagine without awareness, filling their minds with images of fear, limitation, and doubt. They dwell on what they do not want, giving life through emotion to undesirable outcomes. Then they wonder why their experiences mirror struggle and lack. The law does not discriminate between what is wanted and unwanted. It only reproduces what is felt to be real. To master creation, you must take conscious control of your imagination, directing it deliberately toward the fulfillment of your desires and feeling as though the wish were already accomplished. This is not make-believe, it is the divine act of creation through awareness. Imagination is the workshop of eternity. Within it, every possible reality exists already in potential form. When you imagine something and feel it as real, you are selecting that particular reality from the infinite field of possibilities and claiming it as your own. You do not need to beg or force the world to deliver it, for the world is merely the stage upon which your inner states play out. The outer world is an echo, a delayed reflection of the inner one. If you persist in imagining and feeling the desired state as real, the echo must change to match the sound that created it. Feeling is the secret ingredient that transforms imagination into reality. A mere mental picture has no creative power until it is filled with the emotion that would naturally accompany its fulfillment. When you combine a clear mental image with the corresponding feeling, joy, gratitude, love, or relief, you activate the subconscious, which cannot distinguish between imagination and fact. The subconscious mind accepts the feeling as truth and sets in motion all circumstances necessary to make it visible. This process is not mystical, it is law. You are not attracting something new, but revealing what was already true within consciousness. When you imagine vividly, you are not pretending. You are creating a state of being. The body reacts to imagination as though it were reality. Think of a vivid nightmare. Your heart races, your body tenses, even though nothing physical is happening. That same power can be used constructively. When you imagine your desired outcome and feel it deeply, your body and mind accept it as real. You begin to think, act, and move as the person who already possesses that reality. Your reactions change, your expectations rise, and your world reorganizes itself around this new identity. Life always confirms your inner convictions. To imagine and feel real is to move beyond wishing. Wishing implies separation and lack. Imagination combined with feeling assumes fulfillment. You must occupy the end mentally, living from the result, not toward it. Imagine the scene that would naturally follow your success. A congratulatory handshake, a joyful phone call, a sense of peace after the goal is achieved, and immerse yourself in it until it feels natural. Repeat this process daily, especially before sleep, when the subconscious is most open to suggestion. As you persist, the imagined reality becomes your dominant feeling, and the outer world begins to rearrange to mirror it. This law never fails because consciousness is the only creative power. There is no power outside of imagination. All action, all events, all encounters are the visible expressions of invisible assumptions. When you change what you imagine and feel, you change the blueprint from which reality is formed. The world cannot resist this transformation, it must obey. Even if appearances seem fixed, they are only the delayed effects of past imaginal acts. Continue to persist in your new state, and the old will fade away, for the law is exact and unbreakable. Understanding this, you realize that life is not happening to you, it is happening from you. Every circumstance you face is the shadow of what you have imagined and felt to be true, whether consciously or unconsciously. There are no accidents. You are never a victim of fate, but always the creator of experience. If you wish to change anything, you need only imagine differently and feel differently. When you assume the feeling of fulfillment and persist in it, you lift yourself into a new state of consciousness. And from that higher state, all things are possible. It is not necessary to know how the manifestation will occur. The subconscious orchestrates the details with infinite intelligence. Your task is only to remain faithful to the end. The moment you begin to question how or when, you return to the state of lack. Trust the unseen process. Just as a seed grows unseen beneath the soil, your imaginal act grows in the depths of consciousness until it breaks through into visible form. The law is certain, and time is only the servant of your assumption. Feeling real is not about intensity, but about naturalness. The goal is not to strain to feel something, but to relax into it until it becomes normal. At first, your new assumption may feel unnatural, especially if it contradicts years of old belief. But with persistence, the feeling of fulfillment replaces the feeling of lack. You begin to carry yourself differently, think differently, and expect differently. When the new state feels natural, manifestation is inevitable, because the subconscious has accepted it as truth. Even when appearances contradict your desire, remain unmoved. The outer world takes time to catch up with the inner shift, but it must catch up. Every doubt, fear, or negative reaction is simply an invitation to return to your imaginal scene and feel it real once again. You do not fight the old, you outgrow it. You do not resist conditions, you transcend them by assuming the higher state. The power lies not in effort, but in faithfulness to your imagination. When you truly grasp that what you imagine and feel real must manifest, you live differently. You stop chasing results and begin creating them inwardly. You stop fearing circumstances, for you know they are malleable reflections of your own consciousness. You stop praying for things to happen and begin thanking as though they already have. You walk through life in quiet confidence, aware that every thought and feeling is a seed that will bear fruit in its own perfect time. The world around you becomes your mirror, showing you who you are being in consciousness. If you desire new conditions, imagine new ones and feel them real. Persist until they replace the old reflection. This is the true creative process, the divine art of living deliberately. Every fulfilled dream, every miracle, every success story begins as a moment of imagination felt real. There are no limits except those you impose by disbelief. Imagination is infinite, and feeling is its doorway. What you dare to imagine and feel as true within yourself cannot remain unseen. The law is exact, unfailing, and eternal. What you imagine and feel real must manifest.